A film called Imitation of Life opened in theaters across America in 1934, and the critics agreed on one thing almost immediately. The picture had been stolen, not by its marquee star Claudette Colbert and not by Warren William either, but by a black actress named Louise Beavers playing a devoted housekeeper called Delilah. Variety called her performance masterly. Syndicated columnist Jimmy Fidler, a white man born and raised in the South, told his readers she deserved the Academy Award. California Graphic Magazine said the quiet part out loud, writing that the Academy could not recognize Miss Beavers because she is black. Nearly double its production budget came back at the box office during the Great Depression, and the film turned Louise Beavers into one of the most recognized black women in the country, and it destroyed her career, not because she failed, but because she succeeded too well. That is not a metaphor. Those were the exact words a Hollywood columnist used 2 years later to explain why Beavers could not find work after delivering what many called the finest screen performance of the year. Her sin was making a white star look like the supporting player, and the industry made certain it would never happen again. To grasp what Hollywood did to Louise Beavers, you first need to know who she actually was, because the woman they projected on screen and the woman who walked off set each day had almost nothing in common. Louise Ellen Beavers came into the world in Cincinnati, Ohio, most likely in March of 1900, though Hollywood publicity materials later trimmed 2 years from her age. Her mother Ernestine taught school and gave classical voice lessons for a living. Not a domestic worker, not a cook, but a trained educator whose dream was the concert stage. Her cousin George Beavers Jr. went on to co-found Golden State Mutual Life Insurance, one of the largest black-owned businesses in the western United States. This was a family anchored in black middle-class ambition, and Hollywood never figured into the plan. Ernestine's declining health prompted the family to relocate to Pasadena around 1913. Louise graduated from Pasadena High School in 1920. Briefly considered nursing, then joined an all-female amateur troupe called the Lady Minstrels. One evening at the Philharmonic Auditorium, she sang a number called Pal of My Cradle Days, someone from Central Casting noticed, and that was how the door opened. What waited on the other side bore no resemblance to anything her mother had imagined. Before appearing in a single film, Louise Beavers worked as a personal maid in actual life, first as a dressing room attendant, then in domestic service for silent film star Leatrice Joy, one of Cecil B. DeMille's biggest leading ladies. The path into Hollywood for a talented, educated black woman in the 1920s ran directly through real servitude to a white actress. And then the industry asked her to perform that servitude on camera for the next 30 years. None of that was accidental. She carried no illusions about the business she entered. Her own words tell you everything. She explained that in all the pictures she had seen, they never used colored people for anything except savages, and she had no ambition to appear before the public in a G-string and an African smile because the costume seemed a little bit too sketchy for general use. She knew exactly what the industry was when she walked through the door. By the early 1930s, Beavers ranked among the busiest character actresses in all of Hollywood. 16 films carried her name in 1932, and roughly 20 more followed in 1933. Universal, MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, and RKO all used her, but none offered an exclusive contract because that was how the system operated for black performers, who freelanced from picture to picture, always available and never safe. In the overwhelming majority of those films, her characters lacked even a name, with credits listing her simply as maid or cook. What took place behind the cameras proved far worse. Multiple independent sources describe studios pressuring Beavers to consume extra portions of food, the goal being to keep her heavy enough for mammy roles. They needed her plump and, in their phrasing, asexual looking, and before the weight gain took hold, they reportedly packed her into physical padding. Her natural speaking voice carried a straight Californian accent with no trace of Southern dialect, which meant she fabricated one for every role. And here is a detail the black press publicized at every opportunity. Louise Beavers detested cooking in real life, and especially hated making pancakes and waffles, the exact food her most famous character would build an empire around. And then came Imitation of Life, which changed everything except the things that actually mattered. Fannie Hurst's 1933 novel told the story of a white widow and a black housekeeper who launch a pancake business together, where the white woman gets rich and the black woman gets a percentage and a lifetime of loyal service. Universal acquired the rights. Claudette Colbert came over on loan from Paramount, and Louise Beavers stepped into the role of Delilah. A black actress occupying what amounted to a co-lead in a major studio production had essentially never happened before. According to black press reports, multiple white actresses turned the lead down because they refused to share the screen so intimately with a black co-star, and Colbert, who had been born in Paris, accepted where others would not. The project nearly collapsed before filming even began. Joseph Breen, chief of Hollywood's Production Code Administration, attempted to kill it outright because the code explicitly forbade miscegenation, and the character of Piola constituted living proof of a mixed-race union. Breen refused to register the project. Universal started shooting anyway, and the PCA approved the film 2 weeks into production only after the script had been reworked, and Breen's office demanded that nothing good could ultimately happen for the black characters. Beavers fought her own battle with the script beforehand. Working alongside the NAACP, she lobbied Universal to strip a racial slur from the screenplay and replace it with the word Negro, and she won. She told the press that she knew she did not want to say those words, and she knew that Negroes would not want to hear them. That effort stands as one of the earliest documented instances of a performer partnering with a civil rights organization to alter a major studio script. It happened in 1934, and almost nobody today has heard about it. What Beavers delivered on screen accomplished something unprecedented. She received a character written as a stereotype and filled it with such authentic emotional depth that audiences found it impossible to look away. One scene crystallized the entire dynamic. Delilah arrives at her daughter's school carrying rubbers and an umbrella, and without uttering a word of confrontation, her mere presence outs Piola as black in front of white classmates. Scholars have pointed out that Beavers stands framed outside the classroom door as though it were visiting day at a prison. The deathbed sequence drew particular attention, with multiple critics calling it one of the most moving death scenes in American cinema. And a smaller moment reveals everything about what Beavers understood. When Delilah poses for the Pancake Company's logo, Beavers holds her broad smile just a beat longer than the scene requires, long enough for Colbert's character to laugh, and long enough for the audience to feel the machinery of the stereotype grinding. 500 black extras from Harlem's fraternal organizations filled the funeral sequence. Knights Templars, Elks, Daughters of Elks, Households of Ruth parading across a Hollywood screen in what one scholar described as an artful display of homegrown black pride. The fact that it took a character's death to get that image into a studio film delivers its own quiet verdict. 3 Academy Award nominations went to the film: Best Picture, Best Assistant Director, and Best Sound. Beavers received nothing. A Best Supporting Actress category did not yet exist and would not arrive until 1936, too late for her. When Universal marketed the picture, the posters read Claudette Colbert and Warren William, and neither Beavers' name nor Freddie Washington's appeared anywhere, though a minor white player named Henry Armetta made the billing. Universal did create a separate publicity trailer for segregated black theaters, showcasing Beavers and Washington over Colbert, which amounted to marketing innovation in direct service of Jim Crow. Black intellectuals split sharply over the film. Sterling A. Brown, the Howard University professor, published a devastating critique calling the character infantile, and his review landed with such force that both Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes reversed their initially favorable positions after reading it. Hughes went further by writing a satirical one-act play called Imitations of Life, in which every race is reversed, where the mammy figure speaks perfect English with an Oxford accent and the white character serves as the maid. Ordinary black audiences in the South responded warmly though, and scholars found a clear regional divide with positive reception in Atlanta, but negative reactions among African Americans in the North and Midwest. What happened to Beavers after the greatest performance of her career forms the part of this story most people have never encountered. Freddie Washington told historian Donald Bogle exactly what went wrong. When Louise made such a hit, her agents immediately raised her salary beyond what anyone intended to pay for the type of roles available to a black actress. Hollywood's answer came swiftly. A black actress who cost more than the minimum was not worth the trouble when the only parts on offer were maids and cooks. Jimmy Fidler wrote the career's epitaph 2 years later. He explained that Imitation of Life had ruined Beavers because, of all idiotic reasons, she had been too good. And any actress who can steal a picture from Miss Colbert will be given few chances to steal from other stars, if the others have anything to say about it. She was not punished for failing. She was punished for succeeding. Over 8,000 fan votes backed her for Mammy in Gone with the Wind in January 1938, ranking second only to Clark Gable's $12,000 for Rhett Butler. Beavers stated publicly the part belonged to her. It went to Hattie McDaniel, who won the Academy Award but sat isolated at a separate table in the back of the ceremony, far from her co-stars. Beavers kept working, but the roles stayed frozen. Maid after maid, picture after picture beside stars whose names climbed above the title while hers vanished into the credits. She appeared alongside Cary Grant in Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, where her character Gussie delivers the film's most memorable line by improvising the advertising slogan that rescues the campaign. One flash of genuine wit, and then the scene ends and she goes back to being the help. Counter evidence exists, though, and this is where the story turns. In 1938 and 1939, she appeared in 2 race films for million-dollar productions, made by and for black audiences outside the studio system. Reform School cast her as a probation officer who rises to superintendent, dressed in furs and high hats, speaking in her natural voice, portraying an educated professional. It reached audiences the very same year Gone with the Wind dominated every conversation in America, and almost nobody saw it. The film spent decades classified as lost until the Academy Film Archive restored it in 2019. For 80 years, the only Louise Beavers that survived in public memory was the version Hollywood allowed to exist. Television carried one final contradiction. Beulah made Beavers the lead of her own network series from April through December 1952, the first black woman to carry a sitcom. The role was a maid. The NAACP condemned the show for reinforcing perceptions of inferiority, and Beavers walked away after 1 season despite solid ratings. 15 years passed before another black woman headlined her own series, when Diahann Carroll starred in Julia in 1968. A chapter of her life exists almost entirely outside Hollywood, and it may carry more weight than anything she committed to film. During the 1940s, she lived on Sugar Hill in the West Adams Heights district of Los Angeles, one of the most affluent black enclaves in the country, with Hattie McDaniel, Ethel Waters, and Pearl Bailey as neighbors. When white homeowners filed lawsuits to enforce racially restrictive housing covenants and push the black residents out, Beavers joined those who fought back. On December 6 of 1945, Judge Thurman Clark ruled in their favor, marking the first time an American judge applied the 14th Amendment to strike down racial housing covenants. Time magazine covered the case and specifically named Louise Beavers. That decision fed directly into the Supreme Court's Shelley v. Kramer ruling of 1948, which declared such covenants unenforceable nationwide. The woman America knew as its most famous on-screen servant helped lay the legal groundwork for fair housing, and that fact appears in virtually no popular account of her life. She co-founded the Doll League, distributing dolls to underprivileged African American girls during an era when mainstream toys excluded black imagery. She served on the board of the Screen Actors Guild, and when the NAACP proposed creating a bureau to oversee Hollywood's treatment of black actors, Beavers resisted, not because she opposed the mission, but because she rejected the premise that black performers required outside guidance. Her words were direct. "We do not have to be led by anyone taking our hands and leading us to the studios. We play a role and then we forget it." 2 truths live inside that sentence at the same time. One is a declaration of professional sovereignty. The other is a survival mechanism. A woman who could not cook playing cooks, a Californian fabricating a Southern dialect on command, a naturally slender person whose body had been reshaped by studio requirements over decades. She compartmentalized because the alternative was to let the roles consume her entirely. Her last film arrived in 1960, The Facts of Life with Bob Hope and Lucille Ball, playing a maid, listed last in the billing, unmentioned in the New York Times Review. Louise Beavers died on October 26 of 1962 from a heart attack at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in Los Angeles, plagued in her final years by diabetes and obesity that traced partly back to decades of studio-imposed weight demands. She rests at Evergreen Cemetery beside her mother Ernestine, the voice teacher who once envisioned a concert stage for her daughter. One detail at the end of this story feels too deliberate to qualify as coincidence. Louise Beavers died on October 26th. Hattie McDaniel, her Sugar Hill neighbor, her competitor for the same narrow roles, her fellow Beulah star, also died on October 26th, exactly 10 years earlier. 2 women the industry pitted against each other for decades, living on the same street, playing the same character on television, sharing a date of death. Hattie McDaniel earned an Academy Award, a postage stamp, a Walk of Fame star, and a dedicated documentary. Dorothy Dandridge received an HBO biopic starring Halle Berry. Louise Beavers received none of those things. She entered the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame in 1976, and her former home carries a listing as a contributing structure in a historic district, and that is essentially where her memorialization ends. What the discomfort around her legacy misses is the whole point. In 1934, Colbert played a businesswoman who builds an empire on her black partner's recipe and hands her 20%. Beavers played the partner who accepts those terms, who never asks for more, who requests only a lavish funeral when she dies. Very few people recognized what Beavers was actually doing. She was not endorsing Delilah's subservience. She was making it unbearable to watch. By performing the loyalty so completely, with such unbroken depth of feeling, she forced audiences to confront the grotesque inequality at the center of the story. She made the system visible by performing it without a single flaw, and the system understood exactly what she had accomplished, which is why it ensured she would never receive the chance again. As long as the plays are being written and produced by whites for whites, she told a reporter in 1935, there will be the same chance for criticism, and the only remedy is for such plays as would meet popular favor to be produced by us. She said that 90 years ago. The conversation has never ended, but the woman who framed it has been largely written out of it. Louise Beavers brought humanity to roles engineered to deny it. She understood what she was doing, what it cost, and what it meant. The least we can do is remember her name.